Assalam, Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. This is Zishan Isaac with Zishan on air every Sunday, 6 p.m. and onward. We'd like to dive into our key news and some analysis for today. Government shutdown drags on as Republicans, Democrats dig in, and there's a lot of politics going on in Washington, D.C. As always, Washington is entering the fourth week of a federal government shutdown with no tangible signs it will end anytime soon. On Friday, in the latest round of cuts, Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Watt announced that the Army of Corps of Engineers will be, quote, immediately pausing over $11 billion in lower priority projects and considering them for cancellation, including projects in New York, San Francisco, Boston, and Baltimore, unquote. All heavily Democratic cities, as reported. That same day, the National Nuclear Security Administration, the agency that helps the Pentagon with the maintenance and security of the U.S. nuclear arsenal, announced that it would furlough nearly 80% of its 1,800 staff members and contractors starting this week. So this government shutdown is continuing, and active duty U.S. military appear to have been spared. However, at least for now, the Trump administration sees them as natural allies after public criticism from service members and their families over likely missed paychecks. President Trump unilaterally declared they would be paid on time on October 15th, even as other federal workers go without their salaries. And this is the critical moment for the United States of America. That can the President of the United States of America make this decision unilaterally? Do they have to go to Congress? Is there any oversight of this? Or one person, and that person could be the President of the United States of America, can make these decisions unilaterally that who gets the paychecks, who doesn't get the paycheck? Well, that's what the federal workers are asking, because we respect our military, we respect our U.S. Service members, we thank them for their services. But if you go and talk to even them, they also will ask the same question, that yes, because they're most of them are also very kind people, because they risk their lives and they're very brave, and at the same time they go through PTSD and other issues when they return from all these wars that the US has not won. I mean, which wars the US has won? I mean, that's what people are asking. Look at Afghanistan, look at Iraq, look at other wars. Even Vietnam is still fresh in many veterans' minds. And I talked to many of these veterans, and when I was running for office, and when I was talking with the voters and people from all different walks of life, and that's the message I was hearing as well. So who gets to decide? Well, that's the question you got to ask the administration and those who are in public service and those who are at the local level or at the federal level. Open enrollment for the Affordable Care Act, and this is where it used to be called Obamacare, and then the Republicans always fought against Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, although Republicans, Democrats, Independents, or those who may not even have any political affiliations, we all get sick, we all get some type of treatment. And this is where many of those enrollees who use this Affordable Care Act and then the private marketplace or the public marketplace or healthcare exchange, they're at risk as well, because their premium increases are rolling out now. Democrats say that as more people receive notices that their healthcare premiums will skyrocket next year, that will force the issue. But is it forcing the issue at this time? So the next year's midterm elections on October 1st, the first day of the shutdown, Democrats led by 3 percentage points in the average of polls, asking people which party they plan to vote for. They hold the same lead today. Due to inflation, the typical American household, as reported by CNN, is spending $208 more per month. In September, purchase the same goods as they were purchasing a year ago, and $1,443 more a month than they did at the start of 2021. Coming out of the pandemic, new data from Moody's Analytics showed. So this is happening in real time. America's inflation is back at 3%. That's higher than normal, but out of control, but not out of control now. That's what is being reported by CNN as well. But then the cost of living got even more expensive, as reported for Americans last month, with prices rising at the fastest pace since the start of the year. Food prices rose at a more moderate pace than they did in August, a month when grocery prices leapt by the highest rate in nearly 3 years. Economists were expecting that inflation would continue to pick up speed, rising 0.4% for the month and 3.1% from the year before, according to fact set estimates. And excluding food and energy, which can be quite volatile, core CPI, which is the core CPI, the price index, the cost price index, consumer price index, rose 0.2% in September, with an annual inflation rate settling out at 3%. Although better than economists had expected, Friday's inflation data is a disconcerting reminder that prices are still rising faster than they typically should. So this is the economy situation. Trump terminates Canada trade talks again after Ontario runs ad featuring Reagan. So Trump's announcement came after the Canadian province began running a TV ad that features a speech by Ronald Reagan. And that ad, which Ontario's Premier Doug Ford posted on X, begins with Reagan saying, quote, "When someone says, quote, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, unquote, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time," unquote. Quote, and this is again President Reagan has been quoting and speaking in that snippet or that ad that Ontario's Premier posted on X. Quote, "But over the long run, which trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer," unquote. He continues in the ad. So this is happening. Then the worst happens, markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs, unquote. Reagan says in the 1987 radio address delivered from Camp David, Maryland. So this is what Ontario Premier and then the government of Ontario, the province in Canada, ran this ad featuring Reagan and then got the retaliation right away. Politico has also reported Trump ends trade talks with Canada over, quote, fake, unquote, Reagan ad. Ottawa President Donald Trump abruptly halted, quote, all trade negotiations, unquote, with Canada late Thursday night over an ad that enlisted the voice of Ronald Reagan to oppose U.S. tariffs. Ontario Premier Doug Ford predicted earlier in the week that the president would not be, quote, too happy, unquote, with the 60-second spot his province produced to warn Americans that Trump's tariffs could ultimately kill their jobs. Bloomberg has also reported now that U.S.-China tee up sweeping trade deal for Trump, Z to finish. And this is where the Southeast Asian tour of President Trump is progressing. They are, as reported, have done some deals over $600 billion, close to $700 billion with a B, with Malaysia, Cambodia, Vietnam, and other countries in the region. And also, as in few days, he will be meeting with President China's Xi Jinping to finalize a deal and ease trade tensions that have rattled global markets. Reported by Bloomberg. AWS, the Amazon Web Services major outage occurred. As many of you who are listening and watching me on social media, you may have experienced it too. There was a major outage that happened on Monday, leading websites and services offline. Amazon Web Services first reported a problem at 12:11 a.m. Eastern Time, affecting 14 different services in its center in Northern Virginia. Some 5 hours later, it said there were, quote, significant signs of recovery, unquote. Coinbase support, the cryptocurrency and one of the exchanges for crypto, Coinbase support posted this on X. We are aware many users are currently unable to access Coinbase due to an AWS outage. Our team is working on the issue and will provide updates here. All funds are safe. That was reported at 2:46 a.m. October 20th, 2025. And then media organizations including Disney and the New York Times were also apparently affected, according to Down Detector. And then the problem stems from an error with DynamoDB, which is a system for managing databases, tables, and indexes, AWS said. And this is basically what happened. Now, we'll report more on as reported by BBC in terms of what's happening with the Israelis and the Palestinians and Hamas chief negotiator Khalil al-Hayya, who is in Cairo meanwhile, insisted that his group and other Palestinian factions We're committed to the ceasefire deal and, quote, determined to fully implement it until the end, unquote. Quote, what we heard from the mediators and the US president reassures as the war in Gaza is over, unquote, he told Egypt's Al Qahira News TV. It's very fascinating that even Hamas's chief negotiator, who is actually leading a terrorist organization as designated by the US State Department for decades, is also using the same language that many people use, war. The correct definition of war is when two parties of equal footing, or at least maybe one could be very strong, the other one could be very weak, but at least they have an air force, they may have navy, they may have US Coast Guard, just Coast Guard if they have a sea, well, they do. In Gaza and Palestinian territories maybe are landlocked, the West Bank. But at the same time, they should have at least some navy, if not Coast Guard, but navy, the army or air force. But Palestinians don't have any one of them, not a single one. So many people ask me this question. I'm asking here, and that's where independent thinking is so important these days, because even the Hamas's chief, obviously a chief negotiator of a terrorist organization, is also using the same language. It's fascinating. War. What war? I mean, it's literally a ceasefire, first of all, and then do Palestinians have an army? They don't. Do they have an air force? They don't. Do they have navy? No, they don't. So you are actually fighting an invisible war with a group of people who do not have any armed forces as recognized in common sense and in international understanding, not law, in international understanding of what basically constitute a war between two parties. So what is it? So that's another question that people are asking. I'm also asking. I don't have an answer. I think the answer is in between the lines. I think we all know the answer, but no one wants to say it. So here is the Rebecca Wright, a professor in computer science at Barnard College in New York City, also reported about these smaller companies benefit from their reliance on cloud service providers, as this AWS outage I was talking about earlier. Quote, there's definitely trade-offs, but I would not say that the solution is to tell companies, quote, don't outsource your cybersecurity to a company with cybersecurity expertise, unquote, she said. So this is where data centers, many companies, they switch their data centers. Many companies, the smart ones, they still have their own data centers. Today, he said, most rely on Amazon, Google, Microsoft, or Chinese companies for cloud services, and then they don't have their own data centers. And that's the investment that perhaps some companies should have made. So at least they run their own data centers and they are not dependent on these other companies' data centers, and they could have their own cloud, maybe a little bit expensive, but then you may not have an outage. So, quote, everyone takes it for normal, unquote, Dr. Halpin said, and this is where referring to the internet's dependence on a handful of providers, but it's not normal, quote unquote. And Amazon's, quote, US East 1, unquote, region in Northern Virginia, where the many reported problems on Monday, has one of its largest data centers, said Amro Al-Saeed Ahmed, a computer science lecturer at Keele University in England, quote, for everyday operations, cloud computing works, unquote, he said, but even one small error, like a faulty update, can take down the entire system, he added. So that's a very risky scenario that who would want to run a business like that? Well, there we are. This is how the business is being run. And then we saw this outage. And then there were a plethora of conspiracy theories that were rotating around on Monday that it was a cybersecurity attack. There wasn't. And some were asking, even if there was, would they report it? Well, that's another question you got to go ask the people who are in charge of the cybersecurity, or those who are looking at our infrastructure from a cybersecurity perspective, nationwide and all over the world from a US standpoint. I think there are vulnerabilities out there, as experts are saying, and I also belong from a technology background. I'm on the business side of technology, and I know this. I've been doing this for over 25 years, and that's where there are obviously risks involved, and then the vulnerability threat assessments and intrusion detection prevention and intrusion detection preventions, all these key cybersecurity preventive measures would help us to ensure what are the vulnerabilities, and hundreds and thousands of those endpoints that are at risk should be looked at. And the smart companies, they always have risk mitigation plans in place, and then even there's no such thing as zero risk, but risk has to be minimized and mitigated. So that's the update on the outage. CNN has reported US brokered ceasefire appears to survive first major test. Israel and Hamas affirm commitment to deal, and that's what I was reporting earlier with regards to this Hamas negotiator, and then the situation where an attack killed two IDF soldiers, Major Yaniv Kula, 26, and Staff Sergeant Itay Yavez, marking the first time Israeli troops have been killed in Gaza since the ceasefire. And then it has also been reported in the media that there were some imaginary lines that people didn't know, especially Palestinians and some youth and some people, when they crossed and when they were going back to their destroyed homes, as you can see in the picture as well, they were shot at because they crossed that imaginary line, which was an artificial line, but it was an imaginary line. But the IDF soldiers, they were told that if someone crosses that line, which only the Israeli soldiers would know, not the Palestinians, and many were killed. So 44 people in several parts of Gaza on Sunday were killed, according to data from Gaza's hospitals. Both Hamas and IDF blamed the other for violating the ceasefire. So this is where the problem is. When there's no international observers, when there's no UN peacekeepers, when there's no third party, both parties will continue to blame each other until the end of times. That's basically one sentence synopsis of this very complex situation, but let's not make this complex or complicated than it already is. Because if we care for humanity, if we care for human life, there should be a lot of will in the world with the right leadership who should be able to put the sense into both parties that the third negotiator party, or maybe the independent party, with international observers, with international journalists, should take a look at this, because this is going on for decades, and now for the past 2 years, hundreds and thousands of people, and some say even more, have died, and casualties have happened on both sides. On one side, a lot, and on the other side is still a lot. But then question is asked: one life is one too many. But that is still not the justification to kill as many people as one may find it justified. So unfortunately, there's no end to this violence. BBC News has reported, which I was talking about earlier, from this Hamas chief negotiator, Khalil al-Haya, and then obviously the chief negotiator of a terrorist organization, which they are now negotiating, which the US policy for decades has always been that we don't negotiate with the terrorists. Hamas is a terrorist organization, as reported by the US State Department, for decades. And now we are in the situation where even the US is negotiating somehow with them through the negotiators, Qatar, who basically were also attacked by Israel. So it's a very complex situation, and you got to go ask Qataris as well about this, because they are acting as mediators. Evacuators are reportedly being used to search for the bodies of dead hostages in the Hamad City neighborhood of Khan Yunis. And this is also reported by BBC and courtesy of Getty Images through Anadolu, which is a Turkish news media outlet. And then only two crossings, Karim Shalom and Kisofim, were functional, with neither of them located in the north, where the food situation remained, quote, extremely dire, unquote. And this is where the famine, and a lot of people, they are dying because of hunger. And it doesn't happen in a day. It takes weeks and weeks and months to actually die of hunger, and with less food as we cannot even imagine. So unfortunately, very dire and serious situation there. The Wall Street Journal, the rigged poker games that used NBA stars and James Bond tech to steal millions, as reported by the Wall Street Journal. The NBA assistant coach, Damon James, left, and Portland Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups, they have been allegedly in this whole, I would say, rigged poker games scandal, as reported by the Wall Street Journal. And then it was April 2019, Vegas, as the gambling capital of America. There was a poker game going on, and then you can read more about this entire James Bond movie type gadgets, and how many other players who were fans of this head coach of Portland Trail Blazers as well were actually by invite only poker games at a very high number of dollars that they played. So FBI Director Kash Patel traveled to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn to trumpet the bust in a news conference, and then you can look up and read more news on that. So this is where the whole situation with regards to uh, the, I would say, what's going on with the media, and then what we're seeing here with regards to the news as well. I would like to thank our key advertisers, and especially Affordable Insurance of Texas, AITinsurance.com on the internet. You can get your auto insurance quotes, and they will give you a very good deal if you mention Zishan on air, especially get a quote. And for that, you will have to contact them. 713-785-4000 is their number. 713-785-4000. Affordable Insurance of Texas for your auto insurance needs, commercial insurance, business insurance, health insurance, homeowners insurance, all kinds of insurance, you know, name it, they got it. And just contact Affordable Insurance of Texas in Houston, Greater Houston area, and all over Texas and many cities. And they've been in business for decades, and you can certainly visit them on the internet, aitinsurance.com. I would also like to thank our advertiser, Roop Sari Palace, roopsari.com. You can visit their website. You can also call this number, order by calling this number, 832-267-0065, 832-267-0065. And for brides, for grooms, for men, women, children, bridesmaid, even toddlers, boys, girls, young boys, young girls, they have a lot of collection. And they have new shipment that has arrived from Pakistan, and they have a lot of shipment from all different places. Roop Sari Palace, ROOPSARI.com. That's their web address, roopsari.com, and visit them at Roop Sari Palace at Hillcroft in Houston. I would also like to thank Prince Jewelers. They've been in business for decades, and Prince Jewelers, they specialize especially in gold jewelry, heavy sets, light sets, everyday wear kind of sets, necklaces, rings, earrings, you name it, they got it. And they are in Hillcroft Shopping Plaza, 5901 Hillcroft, suite number C3. You cannot miss them. Prince Jewelers Houston, their Diwali sale is still going on, and I would say end of Diwali sale. 281-777-1457. 281-777-1457 is their number, and definitely go and visit them in Hillcroft Shopping Plaza, Prince Jewelers, Houston. And with that, I would like to sign off from the social media. We'll continue with the legacy media. And if you have not subscribed my YouTube channel, please subscribe it. And we'll see you next week, Sunday, same time at 6 p.m. Thank you.